Carrie, I want to assure you of something. If at any time you decide things are not working between us as a couple, or even that you fall in love with someone else, don't be afraid to tell me directly. Our friendship will not end because you want something different. Why are you telling me this now? Is there something about you I should know? I was thinking of my father. When I was 11, I asked him directly about why he cheated on my mother. He told me that he knew within a couple of years after they were married that they were not ideal for each other, but he was afraid of her being angry at him and of hurting me or James. Plus, he married her mainly because my mother was already pregnant with me. He felt marrying her was the right thing to do, but he also wanted to be a father. Well, he could have become a father without marrying your mother. No marriage, no divorce later. That's true. And he ended up angering my mother and hurting me and James anyway after he met and began seeing Diana, his mistress. I just don't want us to make the same mistakes he made. What happened to Diana? She and my father dated for 2 years after my parents were divorced. Then she found a man richer than my father and married him instead. I guess that's why I was much more forgiving of my father than James was. Because I thought he had already been punished for his cheating. What goes around comes around. That's right. I know I've been a bit demanding towards you before, but I just felt like I had to connect to someone. And you were the obvious choice, because you were my best friend and we have so much in common. But I don't want to stand in the way of you being happy. Don't worry. You are not your father. I can see you are much better than he ever was. And remember what I said, that the girl that would be with you would be the luckiest girl in the world? I meant that. You mean the world to me, as a friend, as a lover, as everything I could ask for in my life. I would only trade you for another person if they were way better than you. Which seems as unlikely as the Sahara Desert growing bumper crops. Thanks. I'm glad we got that issue settled. Let's move on. Look, up ahead. That's the Reverend Dave Owen. And he is in front of the Tuscany Tavern.
Good people of this town, do not eat anything here. This place is run by atheists and lesbians who seek to corrupt this town and make it a hotbed of crime and immorality. Take one of these pamphlets, so you may know what kind of people you are dealing with.
Excuse me, but unless the food they serve is poisoned or badly outdated, you have no right to bash them for being different from you.
It's not just my opinion, but that of the Lord himself. The Bible clearly says only a fool says there's no God and such a person is corrupt. When you eat at that place, you endorse them. No Christian should do that.
Carrie, he is blocking the entrance to the restaurant. We can't let him do that. I will call the police. Brother Dave, I got a report that you are trespassing and disturbing the peace. If you don't leave, you will be arrested.
Arrested for doing the Lord's work? I was warned a long time ago that Christians like me would someday be persecuted. I just hoped I never would see that day.
Such arrogance. It has been I, Debbie, and our mothers who have been persecuted by you and those you have brainwashed in the Baptist cult of yours. All we have ever asked for is to live our lives in peace. What's going on here? Debbie just came in and told me what is happening. Officer, arrest that man and I will certainly press charges against him. He needs to learn respect for others. You are now under arrest.
You have no idea what you are stirring up, young lady. My church will bail me out and then you will be dealing with 100 protesters instead of just me.
You have the right to remain silent. And I do suggest you do that.
After being arrested for trespassing and disturbing the peace, Reverend Dave Owen sits in a jail cell awaiting a court appearance.
Those idiots did exactly what I thought they would do. It won't be long before most of the members of my church hear about this and get stirred up like a nest of hornets. I've been telling my flock for years to prepare for war against the darkness.
But then something unexpected happens.
Brother Dave, you have just been bailed out. Congratulations.
Hallelujah. I knew my church would get me out. I thought I was being bailed out, so why bring me here?
Don't you want to meet the one who paid for your bail? Sit down and she will come in to talk to you.
A few minutes later. You bailed me out? But you just had me arrested a few hours ago. What sort of game is this?
I could ask you the same question, given that you started this fight by trying to disrupt my business. I figured out that you were doing it as merely a publicity stunt and that the best way to stop you was to bail you out myself. And besides, Jesus himself said, "Love your enemies and do good things for them." So, Reverend Owen, which of us is truly doing good and following Jesus? I don't think it is you.
I almost wish I was back in my cell.
There are others who want to have a word with you before you may leave.
Carla Jenkins enters the room.
Only 2 years ago, I looked up to you as a man of God, but no more. The stunt you pulled in front of the Tuscany Tavern proved you to be nothing but an opportunist, using others for publicity. I despise you now and regret believing most of your phony crap. I would only return to my Baptist church if you're gone from it. Goodbye, you damned hypocrite.
Next to confront him is Lucy Sims.
I was raised a Jehovah's Witness, and while I understand that as a Baptist you would regard them as heretics, in truth you're much like them. Homophobic, irrational, and even hateful in many ways. The hallmark of a cult is you're focusing on the differences between you and others instead of seeing what you have in common. Jehovah's Witnesses and Baptists worship the same God and have the same Savior, yet they despise each other. Of what value is any religion if it only tears people apart? I was hurt by my own family in my teens, and you and at least one of your followers hurt my daughter.
And finally, going to you and telling you about Carrie Sims' suicide attempt was a terrible mistake, one that was indeed a violation of doctor-patient privilege. You're writing the Sims family that letter blasting them could have gotten me sued for malpractice, you idiot. I am thankful the Sims were content to give me a verbal reprimand, but I still admit that I deserved much worse, and so do you. Don't ever betray anyone's trust like that again. After receiving all these reprimands, Reverend Owen was released and allowed to go home. But it was clear he had been defeated, for his word spread about what he had done, and about the fact that it was Mrs. Smith who had bailed him out. Even most of his church rejected him. The local Baptist congregation formally fired him as their minister the following week.
It has been nearly a month since our last confrontation with Reverend Dave Owen, which resulted in his being fired from his Baptist church by the congregation. Your move, Debbie. Maybe I should resign now. You already took my queen and both my bishops. You won't be a better chess player if you give up too quickly. Think for a couple of minutes before. I'll get that. Dr. Drake, what brings you here? Is there a medical issue I should know about?
No, Mrs. Smith, this is more personal and spiritual in nature.
What do you mean?
It might interest you to know that I am the new president of the Baptist congregation and Miss Jenkins is the new vice president. After the firing of Reverend Owen, the splintered congregation was able to reunite and reorganize itself.
Congratulations. But what does that have to do with me? I was never a member of your church.
True, but you and the Sims couple are the ones who forced us to change. Miss Jenkins, Jason Laker, and I have been telling stories about you, and many of the members of the congregation are curious about your atheist and Unitarian Universalist beliefs and the lesbianism of your friends and even your daughter. Are you and your friends and daughter willing to come speak to us?
I might, assuming you were really willing to listen to us and not judge us like we have had to endure in the past. And we are willing to listen to you in return. After Dr. Drake left, I made a phone call. Dale husband, I understand that you were a Southern Baptist before you became a Unitarian Universalist, correct?
Yes. My spiritual evolution is a little more complicated than that, but otherwise, that's true.
I and the Sims couple have been asked to speak at the local Baptist church, but I am not really that good at speaking publicly to an audience. Would you like to help?
I'm not much of a speaker myself, but what I can do is give you some resources to allow you to deal with some arguments and objections the members of the church may make to you after you arrive there.
And so the following Sunday, I, Debbie, James, the Sims couple, and Carrie arrived at the Baptist church. Quite a few familiar faces were there, including Dr. Drake, Carla Jenkins, Mr. Hernandez, who was actually Catholic, and Jason Laker. Nervously, I went to the pulpit and began to speak. It might interest some of you to know that I was raised in a Christian family, but even before I became an adult I found the Christian religion unacceptable to me, and then I became an atheist. So you might wonder what persuaded me that Christianity was not true. Actually, that's not the real issue. It is really not possible to know for sure if there is a God or not, or what religion among many is true. If we relied only on empirical evidence for our beliefs, I don't think theism would be very popular at all. So rather than debunk anyone's deeply held belief in God, let us share some ideas from a blogger named Dale Husband, who was himself once a Baptist. He came up with a concept called spiritual orientation to explain why different people are attracted to or repelled by certain religions. This is what he wrote for Christians. Remember that Jesus, said to be the founder of Christianity, was a Jew, as were his early disciples. Therefore anyone who is a genuine Christian would also love and respect the Jewish religion and people. Anti-Semitism should have absolutely no place among Christians. Jesus himself wrote nothing that survives to this day. What you read about him in the Christian scriptures, commonly called the New Testament, are second-hand accounts of what some people thought he said. Do not take those quotations at face value. Do not believe that the Bible or any part of it is the infallible Word of God. That is actually an insult to any real God that may exist. Remember that one form of idolatry is attributing God's glory to anything man-made, including books that have references to God himself in them. The many references in the Christian scriptures to the coming of the kingdom of God were interpreted by many Christian leaders as referring to the literal coming of Jesus to conquer the world and directly rule it afterwards. This is absurd. If that was the case, it should have happened while the generation that lived in the time of Jesus still was around. They have all been dead for over 1900 years. Those prophecies must already have been fulfilled with the rise of Christianity to take over the formerly pagan-dominated Roman Empire. Writers like Hal Lindsey, who claimed otherwise, were lying to us. Remember that the Apostle Paul, who wrote about half of the Christian scriptures that were later accepted by the early Christian community as valid, was not even an original disciple of Jesus. He led some of the early Christians, including many from non-Jewish backgrounds, in a very different direction from the groups that consisted mostly of Jews. The Jewish groups eventually faded away, leaving the non-Jewish ones. The result was a badly distorted faith. After all these centuries, we simply have no way of knowing if Paul was a legitimate Christian leader or not. In most cases, you must be a Christian and nothing else. Do not claim as your primary religious identity any subdivision within Christianity, such as Roman Catholic, Baptist, Methodist, Mormon, or anything else. You would be a Christian who might go to a Baptist or Catholic church, but that's it. Reject as necessary or justified any division within a Christian community that claims to be the one true religion. It is only Christianity itself that ever should have made that claim. Not Mormonism, not the Jehovah's Witnesses, nor any other such radical reformist or restorationist group within Christianity. These are simply additional divisions that do more damage to the credibility of Christianity itself. There is one exception to this: if you are also a member of a religious group that is actually multi-faith, like the Unitarian Universalist Association. Then you should distinguish yourself from non-Christian UUs, but also celebrate the UAism you have in common with them. Next to take the podium was Lucy. When I was younger, I used to wonder why hypocrisy was such a problem in religions like Christianity. One day, the answer came to me in the Bible itself. In the Law of Moses, specifically Deuteronomy chapter 24, verse 16, it is written, "The fathers shall not be put to death for the children, neither shall the children be put to death for the fathers. Every man shall be put to death for his own sin." Incredibly, Moses himself broke that law. When the Midianites were conquered and plundered by Moses' followers in Numbers chapter 31, Moses gave this order: kill every male among the little ones. He actually insisted that boys die for the sins of their fathers in that case. Also, in 2 Samuel chapter 12, verses 13 through 18, God killed a newborn baby for the sins of his father, King David. Jesus condemned hypocrisy among his own people. Why should God himself, who gave us the laws in the Bible, be allowed to break them? The simple truth is that God had nothing to do with the writing and assembly of the various parts of the Bible. It was written by men who told stories about God and those who believed in God, but those were still only stories, just as the Harry Potter novels are stories of this modern age. Is it possible that the writers of the biblical stories intended in at least some cases to make fiction, and then centuries later some people mistook those fictional stories for real history? Imagine if 1,000 years from now, there was a religion based on the Harry Potter stories. So how can religions based on biblical stories be justified but not a religion based on Harry Potter?
The next speaker was Jessica.
I and my wife have gotten a lot of hateful messages insisting that our being a lesbian couple violates the laws of God. But as my wife just said, God does not keep his own laws, so why must we? Also, Lucy spoke of God killing King David's baby. But as an atheist, I reject that idea. Ironically, atheism lets God off the hook, so to speak. If there is no God, there is no one to blame when a baby dies of an illness, or if a hurricane destroys a coastal town and kills dozens of people there, or if there is a mass shooting in which 5 or 6 people die in a shopping mall. Tragedies just happen. It is useless to either blame God for them nor to ask him to fix things. The responsibility for doing repairs after any disaster is on us alone. As Lucy said, when God and his messengers do not follow their own rules, they open the door for rules to not matter at all. For anyone. And that is why I, as a highly ethical atheist and Unitarian Universalist, don't need your kind of God-centered religion at all. I do have strict rules and principles, and I seek to obey them in all ways. Those rules are based on real needs of real people in real time. No God is involved in such rules, and therefore there is no issue of hypocrisy from that God. The hypocrisy, if it exists, would all be on me. The final speaker was Carla Jenkins. I have learned the hard way that things you were brought up believing as a child are not necessarily true or even useful. The idea that only one religion must be able to save souls is a lie that must have been invented by Satan, not God. Christianity itself is divided into thousands of different sects, so which one is true and which ones can save us? We simply cannot know. We just have to decide what is best for us as individuals and then proceed to mind our own business. We are all human beings and our humanity is everything. It is forgetting that which tears us apart from each other. Finally, the congregation was asked to make an important decision.
I think we have heard enough from our guests today, so now I, as president of this church, make a formal motion that we as a congregation vote to leave the Southern Baptist Convention and instead join the Unitarian Universalist Association. As you use, most of us can continue to call ourselves Christians if we feel that religion is right for us, but we will no longer shun and scorn atheists and LGBT people. Bigotry is evil no matter what the cause of it, and we should affirm this.
Dr. Drake, as vice president of the church, I second this motion.
Very well. All in favor of this move, raise your right hand now.
And to our absolute amazement, more than 2/3 of the congregation present voted to join the Unitarian Universalist Association. Suddenly, our UU fellowship, which had previously only numbered less than a dozen, now numbered more than 100.
Congratulations, Mrs. Smith.
I can't believe this has happened. We never thought an entire church would join with us when we first formed the Unitarian Universalist Fellowship nearly 2 years ago to resist the anti-atheist and anti-LGBT bigotry that dominated this town.
Well, we as a church had to finally face the facts. Under Reverend Owen, an increasing number of our younger members were rejecting the church and leaving it, and without younger members, the church was beginning to die off. Maybe now we can draw some of those young people back. They don't need hypocrisy and bigotry, even if most of us older folks grew up with it. They need love. The kind of love you clearly have for each other and for us. Thank you for showing us a better example of how to live.
1 week ago, the people of the town were amazed to learn that their largest and most influential church had voted to leave the Southern Baptist Convention and instead join the Unitarian Universalist Association. And quite a few are not happy about that.
Debbie, please answer my phone. Hello?
Debbie, are you and Mother all right?
Yes. I just got out of school and Mother and I are about to go shopping.
No, I'd rather you didn't. Please come home now. I need your help.
What's wrong?
Just come and see for yourselves. This is really bad.
Oh my God, what happened here? The entire house is in shambles. Whoever did this clearly meant to hurt us. They destroyed everything.
You should see the bedrooms. They used hammers to smash things, including my collection of spaceship models. It took me years to collect them.
James, you can still replace models and other possessions. But I can't replace you and Debbie. If either of you had been hurt or even killed, that would really ruin me. This is so unfair. I thought after we won the church over to our side things would be better, but instead this happens. I wonder if the Reverend Dave Owen had something to do with this. Let's not jump to conclusions. We just have to get the police involved. Wow, they really tore your place apart. Do you and your children have another place to stay tonight? Well, we'd ask the Sims for help, but they are away in Boston visiting Carrie's grandmother. Burglars invaded and trashed your home? Yes, and since you were all away in Boston, it is likely they also ruined your home too. I will tell my mothers. I think they gave Dr. Drake a spare key to our house.
Mrs. Smith, I looked into the Sims' home and nothing in there was damaged. At least not yet. But you should go stay there to protect their property. The Sims couple have already given you, Debbie, and James permission to stay there until they return from Boston.
Thank you, Dr. Drake. We will go immediately. I swear, if I ever see that evil preacher again. Oh, who is that? You seem to be lost. Can I help you? Well, I just arrived in this town and am looking for places where I can do production work for my upcoming TV show, The Blazing Beauty. I am Vicky Jones. Oh, I've heard of you. I loved seeing you last month in that romantic comedy movie. My love partner Carrie and I went and saw it together. She didn't really like it at first, until I suggested we act out some of the scenes you did with your own partner. That must have been adorable. So you and Carrie are lesbians? Yes. Well, I am. Carrie is bisexual, but we are in a committed relationship. Well, look who is here.
What are you doing? Attacking an old man like this?
Don't play innocent with me, Dave Owen. First you write Carrie and her mother's that hateful letter, then you try to disrupt my mother's business, and now our home has been ransacked. Damn you. Instead of winning people like me to Christianity, you have made me hate your religion more.
I am not responsible for any damage to your house, young lady. In fact, I am preparing to leave this town and find another church I can be pastor of, since it is clear that the devil has taken over this town, using you, your girlfriend and your mothers as his tools.
Shut up about our mothers. Debbie, please stop. I know how angry you must be, but hurting him won't repair the damage to your home. Let him go. I am so sorry. I am really not the violent type, but I hurt so much. I don't know what to do now. Let me help you. When is Carrie returning from Boston? Tomorrow. Then I will make you and Carrie an offer when she arrives. I can make arrangements for you two to appear as guest stars in an upcoming episode of my TV show. And I will pay you two each $10,000 for your appearances. That should help pay for the damage to your home, right? Are you sure? I don't think I and Carrie have ever acted before. No problem. There is much that I can teach you too. Let's work this out.
And to make a long story short, Carrie agreed to help Vicky Jones and Debbie make an episode of Mrs. Jones' TV show. That episode was titled Tolerance and dealt directly with the very issue Debbie and Carrie had always been most concerned about. And the money the girls were paid was used to restore the Smiths' home, just as Debbie had hoped. Also, because Vicky Jones had given the money for the Smiths' home repairs, Sandy was able to afford to take a trip to Boston with her family and friends almost 2 months later.